I get it, you're scrolling through endless listings, dazzled by glossy renderings and promises of ultra-smooth 240Hz or RTX-ready power, only to end up with a laptop that feels more like a glorified office machine when you finally fire up a game. That gap between the hype on the product page and the reality on your desk is why I'm doing this deep dive, so you don't waste money on a machine that looks perfect on paper but falls short when you actually sit down to play. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking at 16-inch gaming rigs, the HP Omen 16 kept popping up because of its bold claims: a 16.1-inch WQXGA panel, an Intel Core Ultra 9, and an RTX 5070 tucked into a V-ready chassis. The headlines are impressive, but what really matters is whether that combination translates into a smooth experience for someone who streams, mods, and jumps between AAA titles and indie games throughout the day. I spent a weekend setting it up as my primary workstation, running a mix of Cyberpunk 2077 at max settings, a couple of VR demos, and my usual multitasking load of video editing and Discord chats. Here's what I learned. First off, the display is where the Omen 16 shines in everyday use. The 25601600 IPS panel with a 240Hz refresh rate and a 3 milliseconds response time isn't just a brag sheet number, it actually feels buttery when you're in a fast-paced shooter like Call of Duty. Even in darker scenes, the IPS tech holds color accuracy better than many 1080p panels you'll find in cheaper laptops. I noticed the difference immediately when I switched from a 1080p 144Hz monitor I used before. Textures stayed crisp, and the extra vertical space gave me room to keep my Discord window open without sacrificing game view. For a creator who also streams, that extra screen real estate is a genuine productivity boost. Now, the CPU and GPU combo is where the real-world test gets interesting. The Intel Core Ultra 9 285H is a 12-core beast, and paired with an RTX 5070, it can crank out 60 frames per second on ultra settings in most modern titles. In my tests with Cyberpunk 2077, I hovered around 58 to 62 frames per second with ray tracing on at a respectable 1440p. That's solid, but it's not a free-for-all. When I cranked the settings to the absolute max and added DLSS, the frame rate climbed, but the power draw spiked noticeably. The laptop's fan ramped up to a high-pitched whine that could be heard from across the room, which is something you'll have to tolerate if you demand every ounce of visual fidelity. In a more modest setup, say, 1080p with medium settings, the fan stayed relatively quiet, and the performance margin was more than enough for competitive titles like Valorant or Apex Legends. Memory and storage are where HP really tried to future-proof the machine. 64GB of DDR5 RAM is overkill for most gamers, but it becomes useful if you're running a game server, doing heavy video encoding, or multitasking with multiple virtual machines. I loaded up a couple of heavy Photoshop projects while the game was running in the background, and there was no noticeable slowdown. The 1TB SSD is fast, thanks to the NVMe interface, and it filled up quickly with a few large games, but the speed meant load times were practically instantaneous. Warzone loaded in under 20 seconds, and my editing software launched in a flash. Connectivity is another practical point. The Omen 16 offers two super-speed USB-A ports, a USB-C, two Thunderbolt 4 ports, and an HDMI output. In real use, having two Thunderbolt 4 ports let me dock a 4K monitor and connect an external GPU enclosure for future upgrades, something you rarely see in a laptop of this size. The USB-C also doubled as a charging port, which is handy if you want to keep a power brick on the desk and still plug in peripherals without crowding the side. So who should actually buy this laptop? If you're a serious gamer who also streams, does content creation, or needs a powerful workstation for demanding software, the Omen 16 hits a sweet spot. The large RAM buffer and fast SSD make it capable of handling multiple heavy applications simultaneously, and the high refresh display is a real advantage for competitive play. It also fits well for anyone who wants a V-ready machine without buying a desktop. The RTX 5070 can handle most current VR titles without choking. On the flip side, If your primary use is casual gaming or you're on a tighter budget, the Omen 16 might feel like overkill. The price point is higher than many 1080p, 144Hz alternatives, and the fan noise under full load can be distracting in quiet environments like shared apartments. Users who are very sensitive to laptop acoustics or who rarely push the hardware to its limits would probably be better off with a thinner, more subdued model that sacrifices a few frames for a quieter experience. Another hidden trade-off is portability. The 16.1-inch chassis and robust cooling system add weight and thickness. It's not something you'll comfortably slide into a backpack for a coffee shop. It's designed to sit on a desk for long sessions, not to